everything in the US is intercepted by American intelligence, phone calls, emails. That everything in the US is intercepted by American intelligence, phone calls, emails. So, it doesn't make sense at all. It's possible, and of course we still don't have enough elements for it, is that this guy is a patsy. He was used by DEA, FBI agents. They built the story after that, and now they're incriminated a patsy. And there's also the possibility that this is a black ops operation. Of course, we still don't have enough elements to judge it. But the problem is, follow the money and follow the interest. Who profits? Coming back to your first question. Saudi Arabia, the House of Saudi, they're going to get billions of dollars, 120 billions of dollars in the long run of arms supplied by the US. They are creating the impression that everything that happens in terms of the Arab Spring in the Persian Gulf is an Iranian plot. And there's deep suspicion, even around the Arab Street, this could be another US concocted plot to discredit Iran.
In the minds of millions of Americans, bombs targeting innocents on US soil are inextricably linked with the image of the bearded, turban-wearing boogeyman that has become the shorthand for evil in this age of terror. This association is not only incorrect, it is dangerously incorrect, because it signally fails to identify the one unifying thread between all of the recent terror plots in the US. Lurking behind the shadowy armies of would-be jihadis in the popular imagination is the sober reality that every single major terror bust in the United States since 9/11 has sourced back to the same group, a single entity that has in every single case funded, equipped, and even incited the would-be terrorists into action: the FBI. In 2005, federal prosecutors charged Michael Reynolds, a 47-year-old drifter living with his elderly mother, of attempting to wage jihad on the US by blowing up fuel facilities. He was arrested after agreeing to meet with an FBI informant who had promised him $40,000 for his cause, and 2 months later the FBI quietly announced he was likely mentally ill. In 2007, the so-called Fort Dix 6 were nabbed in a much-hyped FBI terror bust after allegedly hatching a plan to attack a US military base and kill the soldiers there. At the time, a 26-page indictment revealed that the group had no rigorous military training and did not appear close to being able to pull off an attack. The next year, it was revealed that the FBI informant who had infiltrated the group had in fact offered to organize the members and lead the plot itself. In 2009, the Newburgh Four were arrested for an alleged plot to blow up synagogues and shoot down military airplanes in Newburgh, New York. The group was a ragtag bunch of poor black men, at least one of whom was mentally unstable and stored his own urine in jars around his apartment. The group's fifth member, Shahad Hussein, turned out to be an FBI informant who had promised the members hundreds of thousands of dollars to carry out the plot. In sentencing the defendants, federal judge Colleen McMahon said, "The government created acts of terrorism out of the defendants' fantasies of bravado and bigotry, and then made those fantasies come true. The government did not have to infiltrate and foil some nefarious plot. There was no nefarious plot to foil." In November 2010, the FBI busted the so-called Portland Christmas tree bomber, who was allegedly attempting to bomb the lighting ceremony at Portland's Pioneer Courthouse Square. The threat was very real, the FBI intoned at the time. Our investigation shows that Mohammed was absolutely committed to carrying out an attack on a very grand scale. The alleged bomber, Arthur Balazan, turned out to be a teenager who bragged to undercover agents that he could get a gun because he was a rapper and wrote an article on workout tips for jihadis. In 2011, the FBI arrested a man that they themselves had supplied with a remote-controlled plane and C4 explosives in a harebrained attempt to bomb the Pentagon. In 2012, they busted another would-be jihadi that they again had supplied with a fake gun and suicide vest. Also in 2012, the FBI busted a group of 5 anarchists who were allegedly going to bomb a bridge in the Cleveland area, although it was quietly admitted that the FBI informant who had infiltrated the group had in fact initiated the contact with them and been present at the meetings where they developed the plan to blow up the bridge. One of the most ridiculous examples of this pattern dates back to 2006, when the DOJ attempted to make it seem as if they had just nabbed a group of dangerous jihadis who were preparing a full ground war against the United States.
Now, Fortunately, because of the fine work of law enforcement, these men were unable to advance their deadly plot.
A dreadful potential catastrophe averted, and clearly government wouldn't bother to hold a press conference if this were not a major step in the war on terror, right? All right, so good night, everybody, and, oh, I'm sorry, questions.
Did the men have any actual contact with any members of Al-Qaeda that you know of?
Any? Yeah, the answer to that is no.
Did you find any explosives, weapons?
No, and you raise a good point.
You do raise a good point, that point being that these deadly international terrorists had very slyly disguised themselves as a bunch of dipshits living in a warehouse.
The picture that is painted by these facts is as overwhelming as it is difficult for much of the public to comprehend. The conclusion, nevertheless, is incontrovertible, that without the FBI, many of the so-called terrorist cells that have been hatching their inept, bumbling schemes against the United States for decades might never have existed at all. Despite what many would believe, this conclusion is not even controversial. Rather, it has been backed up time and again by evidence in the official record and multiply attested to by FBI insiders and whistleblowers themselves.
And you've decided that yourself, if you're Snowden. So he could well be responsible in the future for many, many deaths. We don't know, and we may never know for sure, because one doesn't know what goes into individual decisions by the terrorists.
You do raise a good point, that point being that these deadly international terrorists had very slyly disguised themselves as a bunch of dipshits living in a warehouse.
I mean, I've watched dramas on TV for years where this exact thing is done. It's not a trade secret. What is concerning many Americans is the sheer quantity of private data that appears to be being amassed by the government. Appears to be being amassed by the government without anyone outside of a few select people in the judiciary, the executive, and Congress knowing about it. And it may be a symptom of modern times, but, you know, I feel uncomfortable that people I don't know everything about my online activity. Why should they?
Well, they don't know everything about your online activity.
But this in-depth investigation that we have performed shows it is not this relatively small, although still measured in the billions of dollars, industry it was 10 years ago. 9/11 has provided a license for European countries, for United States, Australia, Canada, South Africa, and others to develop spying systems that affect all of us. So who here has an iPhone? Who here has a BlackBerry? Who here uses Gmail? Well, you're all screwed. The reality is, intelligence contractors are selling right now to countries across the world mass surveillance systems for all those products.
Well, they don't know everything about your online activity because it's illegal.
Could, right?
It's illegal for them to take some steps with respect to it, such as to get into the substance of the intercept.
Let's get back to the breaking news right now. The Washington Post and The Guardian reporting the U.S. government is now also tapping directly into the central servers of 9 leading internet companies, including Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, Facebook, AOL, Skype, YouTube, and Apple. The newspaper has just released new information to back up their reporting. Tom Foreman is here taking a closer look. What's the latest?
This information is really stunning, Wolf, when you consider privacy. Quote, they quite literally can watch your ideas form as you type, the officer said.
Well, they don't know everything about your online activity because it's illegal.
Could, right?
It's illegal for them to take some steps with respect to it, such as to get into the substance of the intercept. If you and I talk on phones to one another every day, and then one day I call Ayman Zawahiri of Al-Qaeda in Pakistan, yes, somebody is going to say, you know, I wonder what has been going on between Woolsey and Pierce. Let's have a look at that. But routinely and systematically, there's no looking into the substance of your calls or mine. It doesn't work that way.
We're not mining through the personal lives of innocent Americans.
So what I wanted to see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
Well, it depends on whether or not you want to preserve the country's ability to operate in a world of terrorism in which a lot of terrorists are very technically sophisticated. If you want to defend the country, you're going to have to defend it.
Right, but I understand that, and there's been a lot of sympathy for that from many Americans, but that wasn't the question. The question is whether...
It is the question.
Well, it's not.
It is the question.
No,
the balance between security and liberty is the question.
I understand that is your answer. But the question I was putting to you was whether what is going on, given the absolute secrecy with which it has been going on until Edward Snowden revealed this, whether it is actually allowable under the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Where is the probable cause for 99.9% of the information being effectively seized here?
Given the fact that this system was put together by the people's elected representatives, that it's been upheld by the courts, that it's monitored by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, that it's monitored by Attorney General and officials in the executive branch every 90 days. It was one of these 90-day reports that was leaked, and that it is systematically supported by people like the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Feinstein. I think you would have to say that the government on this subject has done a reasonable job of balancing these two very important interests. If you try to look at liberty without considering security at all, you're putting on blinders.
Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety.
As far as I'm concerned, all of this airport security, all the searches, the screenings, the cameras, the questions, it's just one more way of reducing your liberty and reminding you that they can fuck with you anytime they want, as long as you put up with it. As long as you put up with it. Which means, of course, anytime they want. Because that's what Americans do now. They're always willing to trade away a little of their freedom in exchange for the feeling, the illusion of security.
This idea that you can go to the FISA court and get a warrant, that's ridiculous. That's like the monitoring of the president, say, oh, well, we're going to pick and choose who we're going to assassinate, American citizen or not. But we have monitors. We're going to study this. That's the rule of law. What he's doing is repealing the Magna Carta. You can't just do these kind of things. And this one is not only repealing the principles of liberty, but it's destroying the Constitution. So my question should be to all of you who defend this nonsense is, what should the penalty be for the people who destroy the Constitution? And I would say, if you're confused about what we should do, just read the Constitution. What's wrong with that?
Well,
you know, that gives a pretty good guidelines. If you don't like it, get people to repeal it and change the Constitution, but not just to deny it. I mean, we go to war without a declaration. We totally ignore the Constitution. That is what our problem is today. We have no rule of law, and people say, well, just let secret courts do this, and the government's to know everything, and the American people are to have no privacy. I mean, that reflects an intimidation. People are insecure and think that we need more authoritarianism. You're justifying dictatorship is what you're doing.